In my previous video, I was speaking about the order that is created by embodied language. And that order is something so magnificent. I want to speak on this video very specifically about that order, about what entails that order. What are the components of that order? What signifies that order? Well, anyone who has heard me speak must already immediately have the answer to that question, because what sets embodied language apart from disembodied language is, of course, the fact that embodied language acknowledges the overt nature of language. So the order created by embodied language is determined by the fact that language is an overt phenomenon. That's a major implication of embodied language. Well, that fact that all language is and will always be overt, the Bible was written by human beings, the Constitution was written by human beings, any spiritual book was written by human beings, everything was created and talked about and written by human beings. Language was always an overt phenomenon. There's no way around it. There was never any inner language. So that's a second aspect which can be deduced from the first one, that since language is an overt phenomenon, covert language does not exist. So the order is created by our rejection or our abandonment or our refutation of the mind, of inner thought, of inner dialogue, of inner language. We completely do not any longer believe in the existence of inner language. That was just purely an imagination. It was a false belief created by the way in which we used to talk, disembodied language, in which this order was created and in which we believe to have a mind. And then the disorder continues in the dualism, the mind-body dualism, and there is no such duality. Philosophers have forever attempted to overcome dualism in one way or another, but they've never gotten to the point where they embrace their own embodied language, in which they listen to themselves and in which, I should say, they use their language correctly. Because listening to yourself while you speak and acknowledging that you as a speaker are your own listener, that is of course the correct way of using language. And if you consider the listener to be someone else as you, the speaker, that is the incorrect way of using language. But that is the hierarchical way of talking, which has conditioned us, which has always been with us. And there's reasons for that to be that way, because we have always had language in an environment which was still, in one way or another, threatening to us. So we never fully, in our way of talking, experienced an environment that was free of aversive stimuli. And consequently, our nervous system was still in a fight, flight, or fear response while we were talking. And yes, it may have been just neurotic behavior, it may have been just anxiety, it may have been just stress, it may have been just distraction. But the fact is that the order which is created by our embodied language is the total absence of any aversive stimulation. Yeah. And then in that experience of who you are, when you're totally at ease, and when you hear yourself because you like to hear yourself, you are overjoyed to hear yourself, you jubilantly express your individually lived experience. And your individually lived experience is not something of the past. Your individually lived experience, that is something that can only be expressed in vivo, that can only be expressed while you're having it. So I am expressing my embodied language in this moment, and I do not speak about my embodied language as if it was happening in the past. I always only speak about my embodied language in the way that it happens now. And if I speak about embodied language that presumably happened in the past, I'm not speaking about my embodied language. I am unknowingly engaging in disembodied language. So what that means is I'm always listening to myself, and I'm always speaking with myself if I'm having embodied language, that is, right? Because if I don't speak, then I don't hear myself, then I'm not having any language. Then I am without language. It's just like when I do not pedal my bicycle, I'm not riding my bicycle. Yeah, the bicycle is just standing still. And the language that I have is not being used. I am not having any thoughts. I am not having any expression. There is no language. So another incredibly important point is that because of embodied language, we can begin to understand that our natural state, if we don't speak or listen, our natural state, if we don't write or read, our natural state is to be without language. And all that is part of the order that is created and maintained by our embodied language. Also, after we have stopped using our embodied language. And this is something that can be verified, because when you supposedly express what's on your mind, when you say what you are thinking, what you believe to be thinking, when you express your inner language overtly, when you make it overt, what was presumably covert. No, there was nothing covert, but you believed that there was something covert. You believed that you were thinking, you believed that you had a mind, and so you expressed what was on your mind. But what you were actually doing was, you were all of a sudden, because you were expressing yourself and because you were listening to it, and because you were bringing attention to your overt expression, you were suddenly having an experience of the overt nature of language. And it is the overt nature of language which brings order. Yeah? The order which I have just explained. And so, without that overt language, that order cannot be created. So when you keep your thought inside of you, when you keep believing in your imaginary mind, there cannot be any order. And that means, it is another point, that means that you experience language as if it is happening to you without your consent. It happens involuntarily. Your mind keeps on going on, and you have these racing thoughts, or whatever you call it. Your mind never stops chattering, and you believe that all of this is true, when in fact, if you begin to speak about it and listen to it, you create order because the mind does not exist, and you tell yourself that the mind doesn't exist. You hear yourself say that language cannot exist inside of you. There's no way for you to hear a voice inside of you which doesn't make any sound. There is no inner voice. There is no inner dialogue. This is just a way of speaking you have become used to due to your disembodied language in which you never could express yourself fully. So what is that? Your full expression of yourself? That is to accurately express your individually lived experience with your embodied language. So your disembodied language in which you do not listen to yourself cannot accomplish that, hasn't accomplished that. And you will forever be stuck with your so-called mind and all of its fabrications, all your belief, all your assumptions which are not true, because this whole concept of internal speech, which is completely false, it harbors all your false beliefs, whether it's belief in God or whether it's belief in an inner self, it doesn't matter. All of these beliefs are false. Yeah? And so a new order is created every time you talk out loud with yourself. And you immediately experience this ordering effect of your embodied language. The moment you produce the sound that you like to hear, there is a change. Good morning. Hi. There is a change which occurs, and the chaos, it dissolves, and all of a sudden there is harmony. All of a sudden there is congruence. All of a sudden there is oneness. All of a sudden there is truthfulness. And you hear it. The truth sets you free. You experience it. The truth sets you free. You feel it. You feel how you are liberated from the untruth that language was an inner phenomenon. Language never existed inside of you. And the more you say it, the more often you say it, and in every possible way that you can say it, if you keep on doing that, it will become a matter of, you're now reconditioning yourself. You stop your disembodied language, that's deconditioning, and you recondition yourself. You say, no, I have no mind. Language is an overt phenomenon. I create order by listening to myself while I speak. Yes. And then this is where order becomes really, really interesting. Then in 2026, because I am encouraging you to explore all this on your own first in 2025, I highly recommend that you begin to spend time on your own in 2025. You just verify if it is true that order is created by you listening to yourself while you speak. And then you will discover the difference for yourself on your own between your disembodied language and your embodied language. And as you have done that, you have prepared yourself to be able to have embodied language with me in 2026. So you have created order for yourself in exploring your ability to stop your disembodied language and to have embodied language, to have ongoing embodied language. You begin to already create order for yourself. This is a marvelous process where you realize, like, wow, this really works. This is what I have always wanted, but I didn't know how to do this. Now you're doing it. You are talking with yourself. You're listening to yourself. And yes, you experience there's order being created. And yes, everything with your embodied language is working out. That is the truth of your embodied language. The truth of your embodied language is that once you start having it, you realize like, wow, the consequences of my embodied language are always good. And so I do not need to change my behavior. I do not need to work on myself. I can continue with this. Yes. So this is effective behavior. This is healthy behavior. This is truthful behavior. And this is genuinely resulting in the self-knowledge which is true and which will enhance your life forever, as long as you live. So, if you do this in 2025, we will be able to have embodied language together in 2026. And then we will be together creating the order that is made possible by our individually experienced embodied language. Yes. So there is the order that you can create on your own, and there is the order which is going to be created by us having embodied language together. And I truly hope that you are going to be doing as I'm asking you, because to be quite frank, this is, in my opinion, the only real future for Western freedom. Because language is, of course, the key to freedom, yeah? And we are talking about the Western free world where individuals have freedom. Well, how are we to maintain our individual freedom if we still adhere to the group behavior, which is disembodied language, and which is hierarchical, and in which we do not listen to ourselves? How are we going to maintain our individual freedom if we continue with our group behavior, which is disembodied language? How are we going to do that? We have created Western free societies where individuals have rights, but we must acquire the language of our individual freedom, embodied language, to maintain our society, to continue with our society, and to continue to be individuals. We haven't really truly become individuals in Western free societies. With our disembodied language, we couldn't be real individuals. So there's work to be done. If you want to have freedom, you need to have embodied language. And yes, if you listen to yourself while you speak, and if I listen to myself while I speak, and if we then talk with each other and have embodied language together, then we will create order together. And then we will create a society of truly free individuals together. And then there's no need to return again and again to the group behavior, which is disembodied language. No, then embodied language will be the language of a free society. Ooh la la, oh, there's mosquitoes here. I gotta get out of the way. What do you expect? I'm standing next to this little lake here. Okay, so you get the picture, right? I've gotta leave it here.